one live, like why the refunds are lower. But for each live for the next couple of weeks, I was going to talk about each credit specifically. And today's topic is the child tax credit, which is a big one because that was the credit that everybody was getting that was making their refunds extremely large last year. So we're going to talk about that today. But before I go into the details of the child tax credit, y'all know what I need y'all to do. You know, in the comments, drop where you from. It don't matter if you're watching me live or if you're watching the replay. Drop where you're from. And because you know I love supporting small businesses and I just love small businesses. If you have a small business, put in the comments, you know, your link to your website, the link to your Facebook page, any information in the comments that you want to put about your business. And so that, you know, as people are coming back, watching the replays, you know, how look in the comments and be nosy, they'll be able to see your business, and you might have a business, somebody, you know, looking for your service or your product. So let's talk about the child tax credit. So let's go back to the child tax credit as far as what it was last year and how it affected your refund last year. So last year, everybody was talking about the child tax credit, and the reason why the child tax credit was so talked about last year was because they increased it extremely higher than it usually be. Also, people, if they decided to opt in, they was able to get a portion of the child tax credit during the year in a monthly payment for per child. And because this particular credit in the past had not been a refundable credit, and a refundable credit, for those who don't know, is where you get dollar for dollar when it comes down to a refund. So it was a refundable credit, fully refundable credit, whereas it had not been refundable in the past. So what this refund did was it helped people, no matter how many dependents they claim, it helped them possibly get $3,000 or $3,600 per child if you did not get that during the year. And if you did get it during the year, you still ended up with getting like the 1,500 to 1,800 per child. Oh Lord, per child, per child. Um, for the year. So it helped a lot of people refunds be extremely large. And so before the child tax credit was talked about, due to the changes, everybody would talk about the earned income tax credit because that's usually what made people refunds bigger. And the child tax credit might help your refund be a little bit bigger, but for the most part, the earned income tax credit helped tremendously, and it wasn't like the child tax credit. But last year, the child tax credit was doing huge numbers for people tax refunds, so of course it was talked about the most. So I think because of that, a lot of people have got confused of, you know, how the different credits work. Well, why is it, or how is it going to affect your tax refunds this year? Well, the child tax credit has went back to its original state as the rules for it for 2019. So the amount for the credit is no longer 3,000 3,600. It's now 2,000 per credit. And even I think when people understand it, okay, well, the credit is 2,000 per person, we're thinking, oh, okay, well, that's still good, possibly, right? It is still good, but it's not as good as it was last year because the child tax credit is not a refundable credit. It's a non-refundable credit. That means that what it does is it reduces your tax liability. That means after your standard deduction, after your above the line deduction, then it's a total amount of income that you have that the IRS say, okay, you're going to be taxed on this amount, and this is the amount that you owe in taxes. And if you owe a certain amount in taxes, then your non-refundable credits start to kick in, which the child tax credit is one of those non-refundable credits. But with a lot of taxpayers, you possibly don't have a tax liability because your standing deduction is high based off your income. So you might zero out your tax liability. So in that case, the child tax credit might not benefit you because it's a non-refundable credit. So that means you don't automatically get $2,000 per child. That's where the gas is. So last year with the child tax credit, if you was getting a child tax credit, you automatically got the 3,000. You automatically got the 3,600. You automatically, if you got it during the year, got 1,500 additional dollars or 1,800 additional dollars. That's not the case this year, and the reason why is because the child tax credit is a non-refundable credit. So it doesn't mean that because the child tax credit is $2,000 that you automatically is getting $2,000 in a tax refund per child. So that affects a lot of people. Now there's a credit called the additional child tax credit, to where if you meet certain criteria as far as your tax liability, then the additional child tax credit now kicks in, and you possibly can get some money from that. Now, the additional child tax credit is a refundable credit, and it's a refundable credit of $1,400 per child. That's refundable. But mind you, you have to meet certain criteria when it comes to your tax liability for that to even kick in. So that's the big difference. So I want everybody to know, like, going into this tax season, even though they're saying, okay, the child tax credit has decreased to $2,000 instead of $3,000. I want you to know that you cannot go into tax season expecting that you're going to get $2,000 per child, because it's a possibility that you might not. It's really up to $2,000. The child tax credit, again, is $1,400. It's refundable. The other $600 is definitely non-refundable. It's based off your tax liability. So it's based off, do you have a tax liability? Will that child tax credit kick in? And if it don't kick in, then you might, at the bottom of the tax form, end up qualifying for the additional child tax credit. So that's the difference between, one of the differences between this year and last year. A lot of people are going to be like, oh, I'm still going to get $2,000 per child. That's possibly not the case. So that's one other reason why the refunds are going to end up significantly lower than they have been in the last 2 years, especially last year, because of that particular reason. Now, another part of the child tax credit that is different from this year and last year is the age requirements. So for last year, what they did when it came to the child tax credit, they raised the age limit. And so that means that if your child was under the age 18, meaning they were 17 and under, then they qualified for the child tax credit. Well, it went back to the original state. That means that if your child turned 17 in 2022, that means you do not qualify for the child tax credit. You will not get any of the $2,000. Now, you possibly qualify for the other dependent credit, which is a $500 non-refundable credit. But again, that affects whether or not you have a tax liability or not. I'm sorry, y'all. So again, if your dependent is turned 17 in the 2022, then you will not qualify for a child tax credit this year. Your child has to be 16 and under in order for you to qualify for the child tax credit for this upcoming tax year. Now, a lot of parents will say, well, it doesn't make sense for me to claim my dependent if I'm not going to get the child tax credit. That's not true. Depending on your income, you might not qualify for the child tax credit, but you might qualify for the earned income tax credit. So if your dependent is 17, you still, by law, still supposed to claim them. You just will not receive the child tax credit. And y'all know I do a live every year where I talk about at what age you should stop claiming your dependent. I'll probably do that probably towards the end of January. So don't be thinking you can not claim your dependent because they were 17, because they had a job. You still can claim your dependent, just depending on the income that you made will determine how much you will get from that dependent and how much you will qualify for other credits for that particular dependent. Now, the other change between last year and this year was the income limits when it came to the child tax credit. Last year, it didn't matter if you made absolutely nothing, then you were able to file and then you were able to get the child tax credit. This year, it doesn't work like that. The minimum income limit is $3,000. Okay, that's number one. Number two is for you also to remember that if you don't have any income, then you don't qualify for the child tax credit. But also knowing that the child tax credit is a non-refundable credit. So by you putting your dependents on there, it doesn't mean that you're going to get like the $2,000 for your dependent if you didn't work like how it worked last year. Okay? If you didn't work, you're not going to get anything when it comes to credits. Because in order for you to get credits for your dependents, you have to have earned income. So if you did not work, this year you will not be able to file taxes. Last year you was able to file taxes, and you had several ways that you can get money back if you didn't work. This year there's no ways for you to get money back if you did not work because with your dependents, because you don't qualify for the earned income tax credit because it's earned income, and you don't qualify for the child tax credit because the minimum income limit is $3,000. And again, remember, it's not like last year. You don't automatically get that $2,000. You only get that $2,000 if you meet certain criteria in order to get that money. So, I think what is the last thing? Okay, the last thing about the child tax credit that you all need to know is, and I've seen somebody say like you can only claim 3 kids when it comes to the child tax credit. That's not true. There's no limit on how many kids you can claim for the child tax credit. The only thing about that is that it's not beneficial to you to claim 6 kids this year if you don't have any income because it's not going to get you anything back. But somebody who is in a higher tax bracket who possibly pay a lot of money in taxes, then it will be beneficial to you to file dependents, however many dependents, because that will help reduce your tax liability, and that will help you keep you from owing or either help you get some money back. So that's kind of how the child tax credit works. So just so I could do a recap for you all, just so you understand like